The judge's voice booms through the courtroom as he addresses Saint Soalis with grim authority. He pronounces the crushing verdict, sentencing her to 300 years of imprisonment for her alleged crimes. The court accuses her of betraying the people by using the forbidden divine mana essence to falsify her powers. Soalis gasps in sheer horror, recognizing the name of the dangerous potion that amplifies magical ability. She vehemently denies the accusation, refusing to believe she would ever use a drug that could harm her kingdom. The crowd erupts in fury, calling her a fraud and questioning if their lives had been in danger all along. Ignoring her confusion, the judge finalizes the harsh sentence based on her past merits rather than her plea. As Soalis desperately begs for a reinvestigation, her sister Lydia watches from the side with a sinister smirk. Lydia steps forward with a mocking laugh, revealing herself as the true architect of this downfall. Feigning sympathy, Lydia gloats over Soalis's incredible power while a flashback to their childhood begins. In the past, a young Lydia had taught Soalis that smiling herself would make those around her smile too. Soalis recalls how she dedicated her life to making her parents and people happy based on that single piece of advice. She became a prodigy, entering the academy at 10 and becoming a court magician by the age of 11. From stopping evil gods to defeating demon lords, she fought tirelessly for the sake of others just to see them smile. Back in the present, Lydia admits she was always aware of Soalis's kindness and her many accomplishments. Soalis realizes with horror that the divine mana essence accusation was a complete fabrication by her own sister. Lydia confesses to planting the evidence and tipping off the knights to frame her sister perfectly. With a sharp snap of her fingers, Lydia signals the executioners to begin the final phase of the plan. Magical chains erupt from the ground, binding Soalis tight as the sealing ritual commences. Lydia laughs maniacally, expressing her delight that Soalis finally understands the depth of the betrayal. The chains are revealed to be part of a forbidden magic tool designed specifically to seal the saint away. Leaning in close, Lydia taunts Soalis for never suspecting her innocent sister could be capable of such treachery. She reveals that her allies and years of preparation succeeded only because Soalis was too careless to notice. The corrupt nobles and royals watch in silence as the saint is condemned by her own kin. As Lydia claims she will take the saint's place, Soalis screams that her sister cannot handle the heavy burden. Soalis realizes Lydia's jealousy and obsession with the title of saint drove her to this madness. The massive magical sphere begins to close around Soalis, shutting out the light of the world. Lydia delivers her final insult, declaring that the true saint is no longer needed as the trap seals. Chains bind Soalis completely as she is swallowed by the darkness of the imprisonment tool. The seal snaps shut with a resounding boom, erasing Soalis from the world instantly. She is trapped inside the nether sphere, a supreme tool said to have sealed a world-destroying calamity. Floating in the absolute void, Soalis remains calm despite the hopeless situation. She analyzes the sphere, realizing it rejects all physical and magical interference to prevent any escape. Refusing to despair, she decides to invent a new branch of space magic to escape without touching the walls. Discarding all known logic, she constructs a complex spell entirely within her mind to bypass the barrier. A flash of light erupts as she casts the spell, shifting her existence away from the void. Using spatial perception, she orients herself as reality warps and she breaks free. Soalis successfully teleports into a dark cave, immediately noting the presence of a monster ahead. She critiques her own spell, noting the range is short but satisfied that the teleportation worked. A massive dark serpent rears its head, hissing menacingly at the intruder in its domain. Soalis identifies the creature as a dark serpent, a dangerous monster that hisses with lethal intent. She realizes this cursed dungeon beast has no place existing within the kingdom's borders and decides to eliminate it immediately. Unleashing her new power, she casts Spatial Sever, instantly slicing through the massive serpent with surgical precision. She muses that existence is impossible once the space itself is removed, impressed by her own overwhelming strength. A sarcastic thanks is directed at Lydia for making her a criminal, as the mastery of spatial magic makes Soalis feel limitless. Her thoughts drift to whether Lydia succeeded as a saint, contrasting it with her own childhood desire to simply make her parents proud. Memories surface of her belief that anyone can smile again if they just keep trying and working hard. A wave of melancholy hits her as she realizes that a simple life of effort would have been enough for her. Soalis stands silently in the aftermath of the battle, her cloak fluttering as she processes her freedom. She spots light pouring in from a cave exit, signaling her return to the surface world. The bright canopy of a lush forest greets her, confirming she has successfully escaped the nether sphere. Stepping into the sunlight, she takes a deep breath and savors the feeling of the fresh air outside. Nearby, a young girl screams in panic as her attacks fail to stop a charging monster. The massive boar closes the distance, leaving the terrified adventurer with only a split second to react. Elna freezes in terror as the beast roars, its massive frame overshadowing her completely. The monster launches itself into the air, claws extended to crush the helpless girl in a fatal strike. fullI intervenes instantly, slicing the beast apart and apologizing for startling the confused adventurer. Realizing she hasn't spoken to anyone in ages, fullI explains she used spatial magic to cleanly slice the monster without damaging the forest. She lectures the girl on the Bafrod's high defense, warning that firing spells blindly is a surefire way to lose. Introducing herself simply as Soa, she receives heartfelt gratitude from the girl she just saved. The girl introduces herself as Elna, and fullI notes that while the adventurer was being pushed back, she possesses good magic output and rare skills. Elna asks about the incredible attack, but fullI deflects the question and suggests they head to town to talk. Elna agrees to lead the way but mentions with a somber expression that the area isn't as peaceful as it used to be. As they walk through the woods, Elna explains that she has been fighting monsters every few steps. fullI wonders if something happened during her absence, while Elna notes that the sheer number of monsters feels unnatural. Assessing Elna's combat potential, fullI concludes she just lacks training as they arrive at their destination. They emerge from the forest to overlook Kadoina, a border town resting in the distance. Elna remarks that the town feels faded compared to its past, recalling how high-ranking adventurers used to flock there. She reveals the decline started 20 years ago after the Saints' sealing incident, shocking fullI with the passage of time. Elna mentions she wasn't even born when the kingdom fell into chaos, leaving fullI reeling from the realization that 2 decades have passed. Still processing the shock, fullI listens as Elna continues to praise the incredible feat of slicing a monster so silently. fullI tries to compose herself while Elna gushes about how amazing the silent attack was. Wondering if time flowed differently in the sphere, fullI asks how old she looks, and Elna confirms she appears to be a teenager. fullI realizes her body remains 16 during the 20-year stasis and turns her thoughts to the uncertain fate of the kingdom. A soldier screams in agony as a magical liquid attack melts his body during the chaotic battle. Desperate cries for help ring out as the knights beg Lady Lydia to save them from the onslaught. Overwhelmed by fear, Lydia shrieks at her protectors to silence themselves and orders an immediate retreat. She flinches in terror, unable to process the sheer scale of the threat facing them. High-tier water magic erupts from the ground, shattering the earth with devastating force. Lydia stares in denial, refusing to accept that a mere monster could possess power greater than hers. The massive water entity forms a colossal shape, towering over the battlefield with glowing eyes. A knight shouts Lydia's name to snap her out of her shock as the situation turns critical. He warns her that this creature is on a completely different level and continuing the fight means total annihilation. Lydia attempts to regain control, unleashing high-tier lightning magic while warning the knights not to dare give her orders. A massive bolt of lightning strikes the beast, and Lydia grins triumphantly, asking how it liked that. The attack fails to stop the monster, and when a knight suggests retreating to rethink strategy, Lydia is offended by the cowardice. Under pressure, she finally snaps and agrees to the retreat, demanding he make the decision quickly. A massive wave of water chases them as Lydia screams the order to retreat to the scattering troops. The scene shifts to the fortified walls of the royal capital, standing safe but tense. Citizens walk the streets with gloomy expressions, the atmosphere heavy with dread. Rumors spread that Lady Lydia has failed another subjugation, with hunters seemingly doing a better job than the saint. Lydia overhears men joking about joining the demons and furiously lashes out, calling them insolent fools. She berates the commoners for speaking so rudely to her, asserting her status as the saint. Captain Radley approaches her about the mission's casualties, but Lydia dismisses him with a complaint about her own protection. When she tells him to find a royal magician, Radley snaps that there are none left and she must understand the gravity of the situation. The captain mutters that the lot of them are useless and none of this would have happened if Lady fullI were here. Lydia freezes, her eyes widening in rage as she demands to know what he just said. Deciding he has had enough, Radley asks to speak plainly, his face set in grim determination. Lydia is appalled that he would dare speak back to her, but Radley ignores her rank. He shouts that they trusted her to live up to the title when she replaced fullI's, only to be let down. Radley declares that the kingdom is falling apart and he still believes in fullI's innocence despite the accusations. He accuses Lydia of coveting the position but doing nothing but letting others carry her burdens. Lord David, the king's younger brother, interrupts the argument, telling Lydia not to lose her temper over an old man. Lydia instantly changes her tune, acting embarrassed and sweet as she greets her lover. David reassures her that her safety is all that matters and she shouldn't worry about useless soldiers. Lydia flirts shamelessly, claiming the failure is fine if he comforts her tonight, while the knights watch in silence. The narrative notes that to them, the failure of the mission is treated as a trivial matter. The knights stand appalled as the saint walks away, leaving them to deal with the aftermath. A young soldier looks to Captain Radley, unsure of what their next move should be. Radley whispers Lady fullI's name, the loss of her leadership weighing heavily on him. The soldiers are left questioning what they are supposed to do now that their hope is fading. Elsewhere, a guild receptionist asks a girl named Elna if her mission is complete. Elna smiles brightly, presenting the proof of subjugation for the completed job. The receptionist is shocked she took down a rank for Bafrat, but Elna credits her companion, Soa, for the victory. fullI's, disguised as Soa, steps forward and politely asks to register as an adventurer. The receptionist hands her a form, warning that she will have to pass a tough registration test to join. He explains that times are rough and hiring incompetent adventurers only feeds the monsters. He emphasizes that with the recent surge in unknown species, there is no point joining if she can't handle the danger. fullI's realizes she is completely unknown now and decides to take the test just to get an ID for identification. She observes the empty guild hall, understanding why it is deserted given the state of the world. Recalling her past, she narrates how expeditions required adventurers who truly knew the land. Those glory days were filled with fighting, celebrating, and the genuine joy of supporting one another. The atmosphere shifts as a group of self-proclaimed vigilantes arrives, loudly boasting about their justice. When they confront little Elna, the men mock her old-fashioned adventurer ideals while she labels them mere thugs. Elna fiercely defends the town's true heroes, but the leader justifies their extortion as proper compensation. Words turn to violence as the man brutally strikes Elna across the face without hesitation. Standing over her, he sneers that the old protectors are dead and offers his twisted version of protection. A hooded figure steps in to support Elna, lamenting that peace is impossible here while offering to heal her. Despite her injuries, Elna forces a smile and begs the stranger to flee the town immediately. The thugs notice the healing magic and demand the stranger reveal her face to join them. As Elna wishes the real fullI's were there, the thug grows angry at being ignored by the hooded figure. The name fullI's catches the man's attention as the hooded woman silently kneels. Recognition dawns, and they burst into laughter, remembering her as the woman who artificially boosted her magic. Their mockery deepens as they call her a farce saint who should be ashamed and atone for her past. The gang roars with laughter, joking about her getting stronger from elixirs before being sealed away. The woman begins to shake violently, and the men mistake her trembling for fear or cold. Her hands quiver uncontrollably, prompting the thugs to call her reaction gross. Internally, she realizes these men have no will to protect the town despite calling themselves vigilantes. She knows that if monsters attacked, these cowards would flee and leave the townsfolk to die. Her trembling is revealed to be pure rage at how disgraceful the kingdom has become during her 20-year seal. Commanding herself to stand, she declares she will clean up the town, confusing the thugs. When asked if she is looking down on them, she coldly replies that they don't even have the time to stand still. Her hood slips back slightly, revealing eyes burning with intense fury. With a glare, she tells the leader that she simply despises him. Enraged by her insult, the thug grits his teeth and launches a violent punch. The hooded woman prepares to strike, her movement fluid and filled with resolve. She blocks the attack with immense force, challenging them to perform their duty if they are truly vigilantes. Throwing her robe back, she taunts the group, asking if she isn't a target they need to take down. Snapping completely, the men draw their weapons and scream that they will kill her. The swords swing down in a flurry of violence, aiming to end her life instantly. In a flash, the attackers collapse, confused and unable to comprehend what just happened to their bodies. Their expressions shift from aggression to sheer terror as they realize they cannot move. The woman stands calmly amidst the fallen men, who lie scattered on the ground in defeat. Delayed pain strikes, and the thugs erupt into screams of agony and confusion. She reveals she severed their bodies and space itself, then instantly healed them to imprint the fear of death. As they writhe on the ground in trauma, she muses that if Soalis were here, she would have done the exact same thing. Her expression is cold and unyielding, confirming that her mercy is as terrifying as her wrath. The shopkeeper stares in shock at the identification card, apologizing profusely for underestimating the stranger who is officially ranked as a Class 5 adventurer. As they walk away, the man marvels that her wind magic terrified the thugs, while Elna modestly thanks him for his protection and for making the place safe. A silent tension fills the air as the man glances back while Elna stands at the reception counter to handle their business. The man reiterates his amazement at the fear she instilled in the thugs, and Elna gratefully acknowledges his strength and presence. Elna explains that the guild is empty because everyone is flocking to the hunters, despite the strict conditions required to join them. The man lets out a heavy sigh, acknowledging the grim reality of the current adventurer landscape and the shift in power. He describes the hunters as a massive, illegal organization that grew powerful after the Saints incident, poaching the best members while the army is distracted. The scene fades into white as they transition from the guild hall to their next destination. Arriving at a door, the man notes that hardworking people like Elna who care for their sick mothers are a rare breed these days. Elna asks with concern if the vigilante group they encountered is also connected to the mysterious hunters organization. The man dismisses the previous attackers as low-level grunts who ran back to their boss, though he admits problems are piling up. Elna declares she will heal her mother, and when the man calls her name, she responds with immediate readiness. A gentle, knowing smile spreads across Elna's face, leaving the man momentarily confused by her sudden change in expression. She tells him that he needs to recover his energy as well, catching him off guard with her consideration. Elna admits she likes his smile and wants him to stop shouldering everything alone, insisting she is fine as she prepares her magic. With tears in her eyes, she looks at him with deep trust and tells him that he has her now. The scene shifts to a quiet house where Elna enters and softly announces that she has returned home. The interior is still and quiet, filled with the heavy atmosphere of a long illness. Her mother wakes up weakly, asking if there is a guest, to which Elna replies gently to soothe her. Elna introduces her companion as a trusted traveling healer, urging her mother not to strain herself during the visit. The companion assesses that she is in critical condition and might not last a year, so he immediately begins stimulating her mana to encourage recovery. He internally explains that while he usually uses physical enhancement for combat, mana can be trained to heal by boosting the body's natural functions. The mother gasps as she feels her body becoming lighter, her own mana responding to his skilled treatment. The procedure concludes, leaving the mother stunned by the sensation and the healer confirming that the work is done. Elna's mother sits up in bed, marveling that she isn't coughing and her body feels incredibly light. Overwhelmed with relief, Elna cries tears of joy as she looks at her restored mother. Elna rushes forward and embraces her mother in a tight, emotional hug while the healer watches over them. The healer advises them to take it slow, but Elna is ecstatic, thanking Soa for what feels like a miraculous dream. A sudden realization strikes Elna as she looks at him, the image of the saint flashing through her mind. She connects the dots, realizing that Saint Soalis visited this town 20 years ago and her mother must have seen her then. Elna recalls the captivating dignity of the saint and wonders if the beautiful woman she remembers is standing before her now. She points out the similarity between the names Soalis and Soa, but he cuts her off by shouting at them to get out. The tense moment is interrupted by the arrival of the vigilantes outside, whose voices Elna instantly recognizes. The companion stops Elna, ordering her to stay with her mother while he handles the threat, refusing to let her shoulder it alone. Outside the house, a menacing group of thugs stands ready for a confrontation. The companion steps out as a traveling healer to restore peace, while the vigilante leader mockingly announces their presence to maintain order. The leader sneers that it is time to deal with the eyesore Elna and questions why the healer isn't working honestly for the guild. His men laugh that the guild is obsolete and nobody bothers with it in this new era of the hunters. The leader grabs his beaten subordinate, realizing with a scowl that this healer is the one who thrashed his boys earlier. He dismisses his men as weaklings but decides to thank the stranger for the humiliation by ordering a violent retaliation. The healer smiles confidently under his hood as the thugs rush in to show him some twisted form of love. Soa effortlessly weaves through the chaos, dodging a lethal knife thrust with practiced ease. With a casual kick, she sends a thug flying, prompting the leader to remark that she is not half bad for a mage. Soa advises the leader to stop perching and focus on magic specialization, which only earns his arrogant dismissal and a frustrated stomp. Realizing she slipped into a bad habit of analyzing the enemy, Soa apologizes for the unsolicited advice. Infuriated by her casual attitude, the leader decides to stop playing nice and mocks her as a small fry. He commands his subordinates to pile on and kill her, escalating the brawl into a full-scale mob attack. The leader screams at her not to look down on him, but Soa calmly notes that she has only succeeded in making him madder. In a blur of motion, Soa lands a devastating punch squarely on the leader's face. Dozens of armed thugs rush her at once, but she remains untouched amidst the sea of blades. She dances through the crowd, her movements too fast for the attackers to track. Enemies lunge from all sides, but she evades every strike with fluid precision. The leader rejoins the fray with his sword, screaming at her not to get cocky just because she beat his non-magic underlings. Soa strikes him down, coldly stating that his discrimination against non-magic users fails to impress her. Eyes wide with shock, the leader demands to know how she anticipated his abilities. Soa identifies his attack as low-tier wind magic and calmly asks if he knows anything about the hunters. He unleashes a wind spell, but panic sets in as she effortlessly cancels it out before it can touch her. Soa explains that stronger mages have superior resistance as she advances on the terrified leader. She shatters his magical defense with a single punch, breaking through his barrier and his confidence. Looming over him, she warns that his line of villainy is about to become significantly more difficult. Leaving the defeated vigilantes scattered on the ground, she walks away while a hidden observer watches from the trees. Soa smiles warmly at Elna, who watches safely from her window, signaling the end of the danger. Investigating the vigilantes' hideout at the guard post, Soa remarks with disgust that they trashed a place deserving of respect. She stands amidst the mess, silently preparing to set things right in the trashed guard post. Having cleaned everything as a tribute to the town's protectors, she finishes her work just as a stranger approaches. The man introduces himself as Rex, awkwardly announcing his presence so as not to startle her. He reveals he is a rank 4 guild member and was present when she first drove the thugs away. Rex admits he feels guilty for his inaction, knowing how scared Elna must have been during the ordeal. He thanks Soa, explaining that he and the few remaining adventurers were at their physical and mental limits holding back the monsters. With a serious expression, Rex asks if he might request a favor from her. He holds his gaze, waiting for her answer to his earnest plea. The scene shifts to the town square, where the sounds of training echo through the air. Rex instructs a group of volunteers on sword stances, correcting their posture to ensure they learn properly. Soa notes that crushing the vigilantes isn't enough. The town needs energy and a strong foundation to truly bounce back. She observes Rex teaching sword basics to the motivated locals, recognizing his skill as a rank 4 adventurer. Soa decides to accept subjugation requests to bring in gold, ensuring proper pay for the work since it is an official request. Watching the town come alive, Soa smiles, pleased that more people are fired up than she expected. Elna runs up to report that her mother is so lively she won't stay still, and Soa asks how she is doing. Elna beams with gratitude, thanking Soa profusely for saving her family. Soa dismisses the praise, stating she simply couldn't stand people like the vigilantes and did what anyone should. Elna vows to work hard and not rush ahead alone, promising to help protect the town for good. Soa laughs and encourages her, telling Elna that is exactly the spirit she needs. When Soa reveals she plans to stay in town for a while, Elna is overjoyed at the news. Soa turns serious, addressing Elna by name to prepare her for what comes next. She offers to train Elna in magic and mana, inviting her to unlock her own potential. Soa explains that to enhance magic power, one must master the 3 stages of control, awareness, and understanding. Elna admits she only copied picture books, but Soa confirms she has already reached the level taught at a magic academy. Soa praises Elna's independent growth but suggests working on polishing her precision to smooth out the remaining rough edges. She advises focusing on magical theory and fundamentals, explaining that understanding one's own magic leads to greater strength. Soa suggests quantifying magic power to check its amount and potential growth, noting it can be increased with correct practice. Using a ranking scale where a rank 3 adventurer is 500, Soa estimates Elna is around that level, though the chart goes up to 10,000 plus. Soa jokingly claims to be rank 100, but internally acknowledges her power is an absurd 125 million. Elna asks if she should tone down the physical enhancement she practiced to move better, wondering if her approach was wrong. Soa assures her that body strengthening has its place, but since Elna's main attacks are magical, they should focus on specialization. Soa points out that Elna possesses a rare skill called half-length incantation, which gives her a huge advantage. Elna reflects that focusing too much on physical fighting might not have been the best idea, despite thinking she needed it for defense. Soa adds that close combat is honestly very difficult. She asks if someone taught Elna, noting that such skill requires talent on top of intense training. Elna flashes back to a memory of Lady Soalis praising her skill in hand-to-hand combat. In the memory, Soalis promises to always be by her side and aid her in honing her body. Elna confirms to Soa that she was indeed thoroughly trained. They decide to do their best together and begin with basic meditation. Soa remarks that Elna's magic feels soft and gentle, instructing her to increase her focus slowly. Elna is surprised by the description, and Soa explains that people with malice tend to have prickly, harsh magic. Soa encourages Elna to turn all that kindness of hers into pure strength. She correctly deduces that Elna didn't fight back against the guards earlier because they were human. Soa teaches that for those with hearts, the heart itself is what supports them, making it the most important thing to train. Elna asks if that means it is important not to lose one's way. With a bright smile, Elna says she was just about to say the exact same thing. Internally, Soa reflects that she wants Elna to grow strong because she can only spend a small amount of time with her. Soa needs people with unbreakable hearts to fight with the same resolve when she is gone, noting the kingdom has changed. She silently praises Lydia and resolves to raise these new allies. Meanwhile, Lord David tells Lydia that women like her should shine in this world. He claims she is much better than her unlovable sister Soalis, while Lydia says she shines only because of his love. Lydia was a genius of the Fontestant house who became a court magician at 13, but she lived in her sister's shadow. The extraordinary brilliance of her sister Soalis always cast a shadow over her achievements. David, the younger brother of the Sword Saint, felt a similar resentment at being stuck as second place for life. Lydia burned with an obsession to bring her sister down because of that absolute saint. David complains that Soalis arrogantly looked down on them and rejected his proposal, fueling his hatred for the kingdom that worships her. Lydia declares that a world praising Soalis was unbearable, and she takes pride in ending it by her own hand. They agree that as long as Soalis existed, they would have been stuck in the shadows, but now she is sealed away. David gloats that the trouble they went to for the divine mana essence paid off when he pictures Soalis's face at her defeat. Suddenly, a guard interrupts their intimacy to report that monsters are attacking. David glares in annoyance at the interruption. The guard begs for help since King Adolf is leading the front lines, but David refuses to join the battle. David orders the guard to leave and not disturb his sleep, dismissing the crisis entirely. He argues that there is no need to waste effort since it is natural for a king to risk his life. David sneers that Lydia did enough in the last subjugation and that the useless commoners deserve their fate. The defeated leader spits a final insult, leaving the rest of the dirty work to his brother as he retreats. 1 month later, the town enjoys a peaceful morning with residents greeting Soa warmly in the lovely weather. The town has come alive since crushing the vigilantes, with credit going to Rex and Elna for the revival. While monster attacks have mostly stopped, the group discusses the nests they have cleared near the town. They note that monster nests are unpredictable lairs that vary in strength and location, making them hard to track. Soa suspects a deeper cause for the anomalies, worrying that trade with the capital might be disrupted. Rex suddenly interrupts the conversation, shouting for Soa to come with him immediately. He reports a critical situation, announcing that an injured person has been found at the town gate. Soa and Elna rush to the scene, finding a crowd gathered around the fallen figure. Guards explain that the man collapsed just before reaching town after coming from deep inside the forest. The unconscious man lies battered on the ground, his armor stained with the evidence of a brutal struggle. Examining his gear, they identify the crest on his shield as the symbol of the Royal Knights. Soa notes his base stamina is on a different level despite his faint breathing and orders the crowd back. After receiving supreme healing magic, the knight gasps for air, regaining consciousness to the crowd's amazement. Sweat pours down his face as he blinks open his eyes, disoriented and confused. Soa gently restrains him, asking why a royal knight has come to this remote town in such a state. He reveals that an overwhelming number of monsters decimated the Knight Order, leaving the capital in grave danger. Sent as a courier to Kadoina for reinforcements, he explains he lost his horse and has been wandering for days. Soa praises his survival while realizing the knight captain, likely Radley, made the desperate call for help. Rex takes charge, ordering water and food while helping carry the injured knight to safety. Silence falls over the forest path as Soa and Elna walk together, the weight of the revelation settling in. Soa stops and breaks the news to Elna, stating clearly that she is leaving the town. Elna realizes Soa intends to head to the capital and receives final safety instructions for the mayor. Soa admits she hates leaving before the town is stable, but the capital's crisis demands her immediate aid as a healer. Embracing the girl, Soa asks Elna to believe in her return, praising the remarkable growth she has shown in a month. Tearfully, Elna promises to wait and learn more, forcing a smile as she accepts the temporary parting. Soa leaps into action, dashing away with incredible speed to confront the looming threat. As she travels, the monster presence thickens, forcing her to run on foot since she cannot teleport to unknown locations. A sudden presence in the forest ahead catches her attention, stopping her in her tracks. She discovers a massive monster nest guarded by a giant bright red frog and its clutch of eggs. A battle cry rings out as an unknown warrior attacks the monster frog head-on. A trio of adventurers strikes a bold pose, declaring that Trinity Heart is not to be underestimated. An armored figure observes the battlefield with keen interest, uttering a single sound of surprise at the scene unfolding below. The hooded observer comments on the impressive nature of the combatants, while a young man and woman watch the fight with bated breath. Close-ups reveal the intense focus of the two spectators as they analyze the ongoing battle with a mixture of awe and concern. The observing trio, realizing the fighters can all use magic, deduce that the group below is likely an adventurer party. They note the unusual mana capacity of the swordsman and the skill of the girl reinforcing herself while acting as the main firepower. Recognizing the use of low-tier lightning magic, the observers conclude this is a genius-level party with immense growth potential. The conversation is cut short as a massive foot stomps down, prompting a frantic warning that the big one is coming. A colossal frog monster emerges from the forest, towering over the adventurers with a terrifying and slimy presence. Ignoring the monster's attempt to speak, the young mage girl ruthlessly launches an attack before it can finish its sentence. The observers approve of this pragmatic tactic as the girl unleashes a high-tier lightning magic spell directly at the target. Soa is startled to realize the frog just spoke, a sign that this creature is far more dangerous than a normal monster. Lord Frogghast the demon bellows in anger about the human's lack of manners for interrupting his grand introduction. The male swordsman struggles against the pressure, cursing as he realizes the overwhelming power of their opponent. Horror dawns on the faces of the observers as they identify the creature not as a mere monster, but as a demon. Soa recalls that demons are super dangerous threats capable of speech and intelligence, usually requiring large-scale military forces to subdue. The adventurers desperately cast high-tier ice magic, hoping to freeze the massive threat in its tracks. The swordsman lunges forward with a shout, striking the frozen surface of the demon's skin with his blade. He puts his full weight into the attack, aiming to shatter the ice and penetrate the demon's defenses with a powerful blow. Following up instantly, he unleashes Blaze Edge, a high-tier magic attack designed to inflict maximum damage. The armored tank watches with sweat running down his face, shouting to ask if the combined assault was successful. To their horror, the ice merely cracks and falls away, leaving the demon completely unharmed by their strongest attacks. The demon mocks them, declaring that tonight's meal will be young adventurers and complaining that their attacks only made him itchy. Realizing their attacks didn't work at all, the party retreats in panic, cursing the invulnerable monster. Soa hesitates, torn between letting them gain valuable experience and the realization that interfering is now necessary to save them. As the demon lunges, Soa jumps into the fray, shouting for the girl to get back because the situation is too dangerous. She turns to the terrified adventurers with a reassuring smile, telling them they were amazing and to step back so she can show them how it's done. Soa calmly charges a low-tier lightning spell, confusing the demon who demands she stop getting in his way. With a sharp cry, she unleashes the spell, sending a devastating wave of energy toward the massive target. A blinding flash consumes the area, the sheer force of the magic tearing through the air with explosive power. The members of Trinity Heart flinch and shield themselves from the intense shockwave of the blast. Smoke clears to reveal a massive crater where the demon once stood, with Soa standing unharmed in the aftermath. The three adventurers stare in absolute shock, their mouths hanging open at the destruction caused by a single spell. Soa explains that she had to envelop the monster's whole body with magic because its fluids interfered with focused attacks. While the trio remains dumbfounded, Soa casually calls out to the other hiding members to come out now that it is safe. Halbel and Saria whisper in disbelief, questioning if that insane power could really be a low-tier spell. Soa introduces herself simply as an adventurer, while the group awkwardly apologizes for staring in silence. The group introduces themselves as the first-class adventurer party Trinity Heart, consisting of Soa, Saria, Halbel, and Duke. Duke explains they are rushing to the capital in response to an emergency call, as royal knights have arrived at their base. Soa muses that the demon was likely part of a larger threat, noting that its eggs could have formed a massive army if hatched. Impressed by her power, Duke declares that he definitely wants to take Soa and her companions with them to the capital. Soa reveals there is one more person with her, a girl she rescued from monsters and instructed to hide. A timid girl with glasses peeks out from behind a tree, and Soa deduces she must be a mage based on her clothing. The girl panics when Soa notices her necklace, frantically trying to hide it and denying she is a follower of the saint. Soa identifies the necklace as a symbol of Saint Soalis, noting sadly that her followers are now treated as criminals. The girl looks up with wide eyes upon hearing Soa's name, asking if it was a name given to her by Saint Soalis herself. The masked figure introduces himself as Kikiri, his nervous energy palpable as he joins the group. The party laments the chaos in the capital, complaining that the summons have left them with only price-gouging hunters. Kikiri reveals he was a beloved local healer, and the group realizes the kingdom is desperate enough to draft ordinary civilians. Blinding positivity radiates from the boy, prompting the hardened adventurers to promise they will get him home safely. Soa analyzes the strategic situation, deducing that the royal knights must be pushed to the brink to rely on amateurs. Under the night sky, Soa questions Kikiri's faith, surprised to find a 15-year-old devoted to the saint. Kikiri explains his admiration comes from his parents' respect, his innocent belief standing in stark contrast to the world's cynicism. The Trinity Heart members reveal they are childhood friends from a village where speaking the saint's name brought physical punishment. They dismiss the legend, noting that few in their generation believe the saint is innocent of the ancient accusations. Soa's interest is piqued by the mention of a Holy Knight Order, an independent unit dedicated solely to worshipping the saint. While Halbel advises caution, the female mage declares she only believes in what she sees, rejecting blind faith. Soa realizes her disguise has backfired, making her appear as the only childish idealist among pragmatic teenagers. Stifling a laugh, Soa finds amusement in the irony of their skepticism regarding her true identity. She reflects on her past powerlessness, wondering who the saint is truly meant to serve if not the people who believe. Deciding to rewrite her legacy, Soa suggests a new course of action to speed their journey to the capital. The scene shifts to the capital's perimeter, where a shattered gate stands as a testament to the ferocious siege. The defenders slump in exhaustion, their morale crushed as the relentless monster horde returns for another assault. A massive minotaur looms over the battlefield, mocking the humans for their frailty and lack of a champion. The beast roars a command, unleashing a wave of monsters that crash against the crumbling defenses. The minotaur singles out the aging Captain Radley, laughing that the humans have failed to bring a worthy challenger. Radley refuses to yield despite King Adolf's grave injury, standing firm to prevent total collapse. He dismisses the monster's taunts as noise, while his Lieutenant Beowulf rallies the men with fierce loyalty. Radley declares his pride in his subordinates, his voice cutting through the despair to ignite a final spark of resistance. The knights clash with the minotaurs, their steel ringing out against the overwhelming brute strength of the horde. A minotaur sweeps through the front lines, calling the humans weaklings who deserve to be crushed. The beast questions the purpose of their struggle, asking why they cling to a life that is so easily extinguished. Radley screams his defiance, swearing on his sword that he will never live in fear of death. He fights for the memory of the subordinates he lost, channeling his grief into a furious counterattack. A devastating blow crushes Radley's defense, sending him sprawling as blood sprays from his mouth. The Minotaur stands over the fallen captain, mocking him as a dried-up husk who wasted his life. As Radley fades, The monster threatens to throw his corpse into the capital to break the city's will. Radley lies broken in the dirt, his vision darkening as the end approaches. With his final breath, he whispers the name of Lady Soalis, a desperate prayer in the face of oblivion. In his mind, he confesses that the order fell into ruin the moment she disappeared, leaving them lost. He realizes their punishment was the result of relying on her strength instead of forging their own. The Minotaur prepares the final blow, unaware that a power far greater than his has just arrived. A blinding light envelopes the captain, and Soa thanks him for holding the line as she steps into the fray. Radley's eyes snap open, the miraculous healing energy flooding his veins as he stares up in disbelief. Soa stands ready for battle, calmly announcing that she has arrived as the reinforcement he prayed for. The massive demon Lord Tauros stares down in shock as Soa stands defiant before him, chains rattling on his muscular frame. With a terrifying roar, the demon unleashes a crushing blow that shatters the ground, but the healer nimbly evades the strike within the dust cloud. Ignoring the monster, Soa crouches beside a wounded man and instructs him not to move while the demon watches in total confusion. Soa smiles gently as her magic takes hold, causing the injured knight's pain to vanish instantly as he stares at his hand in disbelief. Claiming to be a simple traveling healer, Soa casually asks if he has had kidney stones since their last meeting, bewildering the knight with her specific knowledge. The knight realizes she healed Captain Radley's wounds instantly, but Soa frantically waves her hands and claims he just looks like her grandfather. She instructs him to retreat to the capital once he can walk, promising to heal everyone in the Knight Order who is injured. Gazing at his weathered features, she notes with sadness that 20 years have aged him significantly, his face now full of worn wrinkles. The knight weeps, expressing his desperate need to apologize to Saint Soalis, whom he remembers as the honest and strict Knight Radley. He confesses that the royal knights brought about this disaster by worshipping her as a saint and relying on her when she was just a child. Soa looks down with a gentle expression, quietly urging him to stop blaming themselves for what happened in the past. The tender moment is shattered when the demon yells at the brat, only for Soa to smile and say she has already finished her task. Lord Tauros crouches menacingly, his single eye glaring with fury as he asks how long she plans on ignoring him. Soa's expression darkens instantly, her eyes losing their light as she stares dead ahead with terrifying intensity. The Trinity Heart Party prepares to fight, but Soa instructs them to handle the demon while she focuses entirely on healing. She reassures the nervous group that the demon is the perfect opponent for them and reminds them that they came prepared for this battle. A massive shockwave rips through the forest as the battle commences with explosive force, sending debris flying into the air. The demon mocks her, telling her not to get cocky, but she simply winds up for a physical strike she calls the Soa Punch. Lord Tauros charges with his massive horn to skewer her, but Soa does not flinch as she prepares to intercept him. In a shocking display of strength, the massive demon is sent flying backward by the impact of the blow, stunning his minions. The injured knights watch in bewilderment at the Soa Punch, as the healer warns them not to interfere with the fight. Soa casts what she claims is low-tier fire magic, but the spell manifests as a catastrophic eruption of black flames. The demon minions are obliterated by the blast as Soa declares she won't let them interfere with her or the knights. Shocked by the turn of events, a character cries out in disbelief as the scene begins. The group prepares for the struggle in the royal capital, officially bringing Kikiri into the fold as their designated healer. Nervous about supporting first-rank adventurers, Kikiri learns her unique support abilities are expected to open up new tactical options. Excitement builds as the team recognizes Kikiri's interesting potential, firing up their resolve for the upcoming mission. Observations reveal that Kikiri has completely reinforced her defensive personality while entirely abandoning any offensive capabilities. Contemplating the unique nature of their new ally, a character notes that things are about to get very interesting. Despite having average mana compared to Duke the Swordsman, Kikiri's incredible skill allows her to specialize deeply in physical enhancement. A sudden exclamation of being stripped naked rings out as the group stands stunned by Kikiri's amazing physical state. Looking puzzled and adorable, Kikiri admits she doesn't quite grasp the complexity of the conversation. A character politely excuses themselves for a moment to process the unusual situation. The male adventurers look on with beads of sweat, clarifying if Kikiri is truly a pure defense specialist. In a sudden display of power, a mana-reinforced finger flick creates a massive impact that sends an ally reeling. The teammates rush to check on Kikiri, horrified by the violent sound of the flick that just occurred. To everyone's shock, the recipient of the blow claims it barely hurts despite the visible thump of the impact. The observer notes with a cold sweat that the strike didn't sound light or harmless at all. Fears arise that a normal person would either be blown back or end up with a hole in their forehead from such a support move. It is revealed that the instant Kikiri is attacked, she instinctively reinforces her entire body with mana. The sheer efficiency of her mana usage is deemed unbelievable and fascinating, certain to make any enemy panic. Memories of being bullied as a child surface, explaining the roots of Kikiri's defensive nature. Growing up sensitive to fear and pain, she chose the path of a healer to avoid suffering. Coming from an ordinary commoner background, her family found emotional strength in their reverence for the saint. Her parents constantly spoke of Saint Soalis, cementing the figure as a foundational idol in Kikiri's life. Driven by a desire to protect her parents just like the saint did, Kikiri set her heart on her goal. This mix of self-defense and protective instinct is what ultimately shaped Kikiri's unique specialized traits. Kikiri wonders if her parents would be happy if she could get even a little bit closer to the saint's example. Her companion gently reminds her that she doesn't need to actually become Saint Soalis herself. Showing deep empathy, the leader acknowledges the noble desire to work hard for one's parents. The truth is delivered. The only person who can truly make Kikiri's parents happy is Kikiri herself. With a blooming floral backdrop, the encouragement is given for her to simply become Saint Kikiri to her mom and dad. Back in the heat of battle, low-tier healing magic is deployed as a massive beast rampages nearby. The chaotic fight intensifies as the beast struggles to keep up with the party moving all over the place. Curses fly as the adventurers face off against the powerful foes, questioning exactly what they are up against. A powerful strike connects with a heavy sound effect as the battle reaches a fever pitch. A character delivers a devastating kick to the beast's head, drawing a pained grunt from the monster. Cornered and terrified, the beast finally recognizes the overwhelming strength of the party and begs for a ceasefire. The monsters cower, promising never to mess with the adventurers again as the party stands their ground. Kikiri calmly approaches the trembling creature, stating she has a simple question to ask. With a piercing gaze, she demands to know who the monster serves and where it came from. The beast frantically claims it was just a nobody rampaging for fun, hoping for mercy. Realizing there is no deeper purpose to the monster's violence, Kikiri prepares to deliver a final judgment. Coldly ignoring the beast's pleas, she recounts its history of rampaging without reason and doing as it pleased. The weight of the monster's crimes is laid bare, citing the many people it has killed and tormented. Kikiri asks the final chilling question. Does such a life truly have any value left at all? A lone swordsman stands ready, the atmosphere heavy with the consequences of the battle just past. The narrative shifts to the royal capital, marking the start of chapter in this grand tale. A mysterious figure stands behind ornate glass doors, overlooking the inner sanctum of the palace. Within the royal chambers, a man in military regalia stands flanked by attentive maids. The man's face is shown in close-up as he sternly inquires about the status of someone's injuries. King Adolf sits heavily bandaged and weary, his presence a shadow of its former glory. The king grimly admits he won't be able to return to the front lines for quite some time. David, the court mage, is sharply criticized for his inability to fully heal the sovereign's wounds. Details emerge of the king's critical state, where bone had pierced deep into his vital organs. David apologizes profusely as he is told that fully healing the king is the absolute bare minimum expected of him. A harsh philosophy is voiced. Useless people are seen as a burden just by existing. The situation is dire, with no army doctors and mages exhausted of all healing magic. Despite the exhaustion, there is a desperate hope that the knights still fighting outside can hold out. The sheer toughness of the enemy is acknowledged, noting a warrior has been resting since the fire demon battle. Orders are given to send Lydia out, assuming her mana has finally been restored. Confused looks are exchanged as a skeptical punctuates the tense royal meeting. Rumors of loud noises coming from a certain room every night suggest that rest has been hard to come by. Rage erupts as the character demands to know who started such scandalous talk. The king laments that the nation is at its limit and predicts the kingdom will fall in the near future. Looking at his own hands, the sovereign calls the current state of affairs truly pathetic. A bold and treasonous claim is made. If the king is failing, someone else will take the throne. The challenger is told they aren't fit for the crown, especially since they only toy with Lydia. Accusations fly that the challenger doesn't care about the people, leading to a heated confrontation. The concept of caring is dismissed as idealistic crap during this power struggle. The king solemnly admits that he too perhaps did not have enough care for his people. The name, Soalis, is invoked once more, haunting the conversation of the fallen kingdom. The king despairs, wishing Soalis were here to save them from his own worthless rule. Tension rises as the king mentions David's acceptance of a past royal court verdict. David reacts with shock and confusion, questioning why such a sensitive topic is being raised now. David claims total ignorance regarding what happened after the sealing took place. The realization hits that if David doesn't know, then Lydia likely doesn't know either. They discuss the nether sphere, relieved it didn't fall into the hands of those pulling strings in the shadows. David is told that the king hasn't been idle and wanted him to know he did something. Arguments break out over whether the nether sphere was hidden or if the seal can even be broken. Accusations are leveled that Soalis deserve to be sealed for using abnormal, divine mana essence. The argument ends in a pained grunt, with the finality that neither of them is right. Dismissing the conversation, they conclude that with Lydia around, monsters pose no real threat. The narrative reflects on a mysterious girl who was far more complex than a mere monster. A man grits his teeth in frustration, noting that the woman's complexion has been looking poor lately. A messenger interrupts King Adolf to deliver an urgent report. The king is stunned to learn that the army led by Taurus has been successfully driven back. The reporter reveals the shocking news that there were almost no damages to their side. He explains that thanks to a first-rank adventurer party, every injured person was fully healed. The king listens intently as the details of the miraculous defense are laid out. It is revealed that the entire feat was accomplished by only 3 people and 2 healers. The king questions if such a small group could truly defeat a demon-led horde. The messenger confirms the truth of the report, leaving no room for doubt. King Adolf expresses his desire to thank them personally and asks for the location of the healers. The messenger explains that the healers went straight to the clinic to help the citizens upon entering the capital. An arrogant man shouts that an audience with the king should always come first. The man continues his outburst, but is told to wait until things settle down. He is warned to watch his mouth for suggesting that the healers should leave the people unchecked. The king calmly decides that since they are still saving lives, the royal greetings can wait. Furious at the lack of protocol, the man storms out of the room. He insults the king's dignity and vows to see the situation at the clinic with his own eyes. The scene shifts to the local clinic where the mysterious healers have set up shop. People gather outside the clinic as word of the skilled healers spreads through the city. The clinic is bustling with activity as the staff prepares for an influx of patients. Inside, a blonde healer tells her companion, Kikiri, to focus on treatment despite the overwhelming number of patients. The blonde healer takes charge of the critical cases while assigning Kikiri to handle the lighter injuries. Looking out at the royal capital, the healer is stunned by the sheer misery she hasn't seen in 20 years. She observes the horrific conditions where refugees are living on the streets with no functioning life. She notes that sanitation is non-existent and essential supplies like water have become scarce. The healer reassures a patient that they are safe now that aid has arrived from a far-off town. The patient expresses deep gratitude, feeling a sense of nostalgia from the healer's presence. The patient remarks on how warm and comforting the healing magic feels. A patient compares the healer's skill to that of a saint, causing her to blush in embarrassment. The healer ponders the title of saint, while observing how the clinic has brightened up since their arrival. She offers a gentle, kind smile to those she is working so hard to save. Kikiri's cheerful attitude helps calm the mood of the patients as she moves through the ward. The clinic director admits that while they are a huge help, the overall medical crisis is far from solved. The healer is glad to be of use as they finish treating the current group of patients. She turns to speak with the director about the dire situation of the capital. The director laments that they are losing lives that could easily be saved if they had more resources. He explains that poor sanitation has led to outbreaks of infections that didn't exist 2 years ago. The healer realizes that while her magic can cure individuals, it cannot solve the systemic hygiene issues of the entire capital. Suddenly, a loud noise erupts from outside the clinic, catching everyone's attention. Figures loom at the entrance of the clinic, casting long shadows over the patients. A rude voice barks at a child to move out of the way, causing a commotion at the door. The healers look up in shock as someone forcefully enters the medical space. The intruder insults the clinic, calling it a filthy and disgusting place. The patients and staff watch in fear as armed men stride into the treatment area. Prince David demands to know if she is the healer everyone has been talking about. He mocks her for healing commoners without first paying respects to the royal family. David aggressively demands that the hooded healer show him her face. As she looks at him, she feels he is hiding something and wonders who he truly is. The clinic director tries to intervene, identifying the intruder as Prince David. David brutally strikes the director, calling him a filthy commoner who spoke without permission. The man is revealed to be David, the second prince of the realm. The healer remembers him as a vile man who assaulted maids and viewed commoners as subhuman. David leers at the healer and arrogantly demands that she become his woman. She is disgusted to see that his rotten personality hasn't changed at all in 20 years. Kikiri worries about the escalating tension, but the lead healer remains remarkably calm. David questions how a traveling group could possibly have defeated a demon-led horde. He demands an explanation for their victory, clearly doubting their capabilities. The healer introduces herself as a traveling adventurer who came in response to the capital's plea. David mocks the idea of ordinary citizens ever holding a weapon or being useful in a fight. He accuses her of using the people he summoned as mere meat shields and fodder. The prince lectures her on common sense, stating she should have reported to the castle first. She politely asks for forgiveness, citing the overwhelming number of patients who needed immediate care. David is outraged that she prioritized commoners over greeting royalty and asks if she thinks that is acceptable. The healer stands her ground and firmly tells the prince to leave the clinic. David's face contorts with rage at being ordered around by a common healer. In a blur of motion, the healer moves to defend herself against the prince's aggression. Kikiri screams in terror as the soldiers draw their weapons against the healer. To everyone's absolute shock, the healer catches the prince's sword and shatters the blade with her bare hand. The room falls into a stunned silence as the broken metal hits the floor. David reels back in disbelief, cursing the woman for her impossible strength. Witnesses beg the prince to stop before things turn deadly in the clinic. David declares he will show no mercy to someone who dares look down on the king's brother. The healer's eyes flash with cold fury as she points out he just drew a sword on a patient. She delivers a devastating blow that sends the arrogant prince flying back. The healer stands tall, her hood falling back as she unleashes her hidden power. David coughs up blood, completely overwhelmed by the healer's sudden counterattack. She looms over him, declaring that he is truly beyond any help or redemption. The prince collapses in agony, his royal arrogance shattered along with his sword. The clinic falls silent as the confrontation reaches its shocking conclusion. Chaos erupts as soldiers recoil in terror, branding the mysterious figure a monster while David lies incapacitated on the ground. A tense silence falls over the room as the hooded figure stands calmly, offering a slight, sweating smile amidst the confusion. Internal guilt gnaws at the protagonist, who realizes their overwhelming power has accidentally shattered the peaceful atmosphere and reignited the tension. Approaching the director, the protagonist offers a sincere apology for the commotion while acknowledging their undeniable resemblance to someone from the past. Flashbacks reveal the protagonist's awe-inspiring display of power, where they struck down villains with ease to the applause of the onlookers. The director gazes in disbelief at the hooded figure, trembling as he notes that they look exactly like the legendary Saint Soalis. Desperate for hope, the man pleads for permission to believe the healer before him is truly the saint, even if he might be mistaken. The man's face is etched with profound sorrow as he reflects on the weight of the saint's legacy and the seal that changed everything. The protagonist humbly deflects the grand title, insisting they are merely a simple healer despite the miraculous evidence. Dawn breaks over the majestic capital the next day, with the sun's rays illuminating the sprawling stone towers of the royal castle. The group of adventurers marches through the high-vaulted corridors of the palace, led by a guide toward their royal audience. Members of the party exchange confused whispers, wondering about the true nature of the minor commotion that occurred back at the clinic. Brief, somber acknowledgments pass between the companions as they prepare themselves for the gravity of the meeting ahead. The protagonist offers a light-hearted laugh to mask the truth, dismissing the previous day's life-changing events as a minor incident. Thoughts of political chaos weigh heavily on the protagonist, who knows revealing Saint Soali's return would destabilize the entire country. The party reaches the grand threshold, mentally bracing themselves for the imminent encounter with the king. A blinding light pours through the opening doors, signaling the transition into the heart of the kingdom's power. They step into a breathtaking audience chamber, where massive pillars and intricate geometric ceilings dwarf the approaching travelers. The adventurers gaze upward in absolute awe, overwhelmed by the sheer scale and opulence of the royal reception hall. From the height of the throne, a powerful voice addresses the group, officially welcoming the brave adventurers to the court. Bowing deeply, the group's leader expresses their immense honor at being granted an audience despite their delayed arrival. The king reviews the reports, identifying the members of the Trinity Heart Party and specifically noting the presence of the healer, Kikiri. A heavy gaze is exchanged between the king and the hooded protagonist, who stands with eyes closed in a display of quiet reverence. Citing the chill of the hall, the king initially commands the protagonist to remove their hood before they begin the proceedings. Recognizing the healer as Soa, the king charitably changes his mind, allowing the hood to remain due to the castle's age and lack of repairs. The king grants the healer permission to approach the throne, dismissing his guard's concerns with a calm wave of his hand. Surprised by the king's perception, the protagonist realizes a hidden wound has been noticed despite their best efforts to conceal it. Gentle hands reach out to administer aid, acknowledging that the act of touching the royal person may be overstepping bounds. A soft glow of healing magic emanates from Soa's hands as she focuses her power on the king's injury. The king admits he is ashamed of his poor judgment, but Soa kindly insists he should not worry himself over the matter. With a warm and gentle smile, Soa urges the king to let go of any self-blame regarding the situation. A hazy vision of the past flickers, showing two figures sharing a peaceful moment on a bench surrounded by blooming flowers. The memory fades into a close-up of a familiar ornamental trim, bridging the gap between ancient history and the present. The king offers his sincere gratitude to the party for defeating the Toros, noting that the capital might have been destroyed without them. Shifting to grim business, the king explains that the kingdom is currently besieged by a frequent surge of monster nests. Military strength is running dangerously thin as encounters with demonkind are no longer rare occurrences across the land. Internal strife plagues the realm, with the Holy Knight Order rising from royal knight defectors who now rally under devotion to the saint. The loss of the Adventurers Guild's support has hit the kingdom hard, as many hunters have been absorbed by rival factions. The king reveals a bitter truth: the Holy Knights view the royal family as hated enemies for the ancient sealing of the saint. Soa questions whether these religious factions have caused direct harm, to which the king responds, not so far. Distribution has halted as the hunters have transformed into a massive outlaw faction that endangers civilians and seizes resources. The king pleads for the party's youthful strength, admitting that the state of the kingdom is far beyond what he can handle alone. Soa reflects privately on the dark history, wondering if her sealing 20 years ago is directly linked to the current surge in monsters. The party leader pledges their full cooperation, promising that they will not hold back in supporting the crown. Duke interjects with a sharp reminder, asking the king if he realizes that the capital isn't the only place suffering in this crisis. Maintaining his composure, the king affirms he is well aware and fully intends to put the needs of his people first. The king stoically accepts that he may be called cruel, but as ruler he must make impossible choices to save as many as he can. With eyes closed in deep thought, the king declares that he must trust his own judgment while doing everything in his power. Halbel and the rest of the party officially swear their service to the kingdom under the king's command. The warriors exchange a quick, light-hearted moment, reclaiming their resolve for the difficult missions to come. The king delegates the briefing of Trinity Heart to his Knight Order, entrusting the party with their upcoming military mission. Turning to Kikiri, the king requests her specific service as a military medic based on her reputable work at the clinics. Startled by the sudden royal request, Kikiri jumps to attention and offers a flustered, high-pitched confirmation. The king admits they are critically short on healers, making a skilled professional like her incredibly reassuring to the army. A moment of confusion strikes Soa as she overhears a mention of a role as the army's saint. The king then turns his full attention back to healer Soa to discuss her unique role in the upcoming conflict. Soa looks up sharply, her voice steady as she addresses the king with a weight that hints at her true identity. The party stands together in silence, their diverse skills united for the sake of a kingdom on the brink of collapse. Soa asks a pointed, lingering question regarding the current whereabouts and status of Saint Lydia. Later, the king is informed that Lady Soa has been brought to a private area for a more personal discussion. Standing alone by a window in the reception room, the king gazes out at his realm while awaiting his guest. The king turns as Soa enters, the atmosphere between them shifting from formal to deeply personal. With a knowing smile, The king drops the facade and directly addresses the hooded woman as Soalis. Soa realizes her disguise was not as impenetrable as she hoped, noting that the king noticed her identity after all. With a graceful movement, Soa begins to pull back her hood, preparing to reveal her face to her old friend. She admits that even after 20 years, she expected some might recognize her face, hence her initial caution. The king teases her gently, pointing out that the name, Soa, wasn't exactly a masterclass in identity concealment. The king explains that even after realizing the truth, her magical hood made her feel like someone else entirely. With open arms, he welcomes her back to the world, while she wonders if she can truly claim to have returned. A moment of silence stretches between them as they stand together, the weight of 2 decades of separation hanging in the air. The king utters a soft, heartfelt apology, his voice filled with the regret of a man who has carried a heavy burden alone. Soalis observes that while King Adolf has aged significantly, he still retains the youthful spirit of the 21-year-old she once knew. The king confesses his deep regret, explaining he wasn't told of her trial until it was far too late to stop the sealing. Soalis finds comfort in learning that even Captain Radley believed in her innocence during that dark time. The king laments not noticing sooner how much the years of conflict and the saint's absence had worn down his loyal commander. They share a moment of mutual hope, agreeing that a strong man like Radley will surely find himself again if he sees a path forward. The king validates her decision to remain hidden, noting that word of the saint's return would spark brutal clashes between factions. With her mind finally at ease, Soalis agrees that it is best for now to keep things exactly as they are. Soalis inquires about the fate of the former king and the nobles, learning that the previous monarchs have been bedridden for years. The king explains that while most nobles fell from power after the saint's sealing, some still hold dangerous influence over the land. Suspicion hangs heavy in the air as the king reveals that while many nobles were coerced into the sealing, others now live in suspicious comfort. The king admits his isolation led him to the front lines, fueled by a lack of allies he could truly trust. With a heavy gaze, the king calls out the name Lydia, questioning Soalis about her true nature. A pointed question pierces the silence. Did Lydia truly fulfill the duties expected of a saint? The king acknowledges the harsh truth that Lydia failed to measure up to the standard Soalis set, especially as the monster threat peaked. Soalis reflects on the frustration of Lydia's untouchable status, given her perceived vital role in national defense. The discovery of Lydia's lavish mansion in the capital's finest district sparks an immediate demand to find her current location. Turning from the window, the king makes a heartfelt request for Soalis to finally reveal herself to her parents. With a gentle smile, he urges her to go see them, emphasizing the importance of family. Soalis gazes back, cognizant that even though their time is critical, he prioritizes her personal peace. The king decides to save the remaining revelations for later, leaving Soalis moved by his enduring kindness. He admits he was prepared for her to unleash a wave of justified anger, catching Soalis off guard. The king laments how the country wronged her, calling her return from being framed nothing short of a miracle. Soalis realizes it wasn't the nation that failed her, but a shadow puppeteer pulling the strings from the darkness. Driven by the survival of those who believe in her, Soalis vows to use her innate power regardless of the insults thrown her way. Inspired by her resolve, the king swears a solemn oath to rebuild the kingdom alongside her. As Soalis departs, the king watches from the window, whispering a quiet thank you to the woman who changed everything. His mind drifts back over 20 years to the moment they first met, noting how she hasn't changed at all. The flashback begins with a younger, arrogant king questioning if she is the court mage known as the saint. A young David stands nearby as the king dismissively asks if she needs something from him. The king hums in contemplation, sizing up the young saint for the very first time. With a haughty air, he grants her permission to dine with him immediately, expecting instant compliance. To his absolute shock, she refuses the royal invitation, leading him to demand what could possibly be more important than him. Prince Adolf interjects, covering for Soalis by claiming she has urgent work to attend to. The king tracks her down later, surprised to find her alone and seemingly hiding. David watches with a teeth of annoyance as Adolf gently leads Soalis away from the tense encounter. The scene shifts to a serene, sun-drenched garden filled with lush greenery. Walking through the roses, Soalis asks Prince Adolf about the urgent work he used as an excuse earlier. Soalis deflects by admiring the beauty of the courtyard, her cheeks flushing with slight embarrassment. Adolf explains he needed to apologize for David's rudeness and keep his brother from taking an unwanted interest in her. He expresses concern over her relentless schedule, but Soalis offers a warm smile and tells him not to worry. Soalis apologizes for causing him worry, her eyes bright with sincerity. She confesses that seeing others smile makes her want to work harder, finding pure joy in helping the people. Adolf points out the irony that she tells everyone else to rest while neglecting her own well-being. He invites her to visit him more often, seeking her company in the quiet moments between duties. Adolf guides her through the greenery, insisting the calm atmosphere is perfect for a proper conversation. Just look without thinking, he suggests, but Soalis finds herself distracted and suffers a sudden slip. Adolf catches her instantly, pulling her close and asking with concern if she is all right. He chides her gently, noting that losing focus is a clear sign of her total exhaustion. Adolf shocks her by admitting that he, too, is reaching his limit and reveals a hidden truth. The prince confesses that there have been countless times when he wished he could simply run away from his responsibilities. Soalis chuckles softly, remarking that he always looked like someone who never entertained such weak thoughts. He laughs along with her, admitting that even a prince gets tired of the weight he carries. He reveals that seeing her give everything for others, without a thought for herself, is what gives him the strength to continue. Soalis blushes at the exaggeration, while Adolf admits he never cared about helping anyone until he met her. Adolf jokes that he even considered giving the throne to David just to escape the burden. He clenches his hand, explaining that he wanted to change his pathetic self by following her selfless example. With newfound resolve, he tells her to come to him without hesitation, wanting to walk alongside her from now on. He apologizes for speaking so freely, but Soalis is clearly moved by his vulnerability. Adolf looks at her with a smirk, asking a simple yet profound question. First, who should I help? Tears of joy well up in Soalis's eyes as she smiles, telling the prince he flatters her too much. The flashback ends, returning to the present as the two characters sit together on a park bench. The king laments that in the end, he left everything resting on her small shoulders. He stares into the distance, reflecting on how he has grown old while she remains exactly as she was. A final sigh escapes him as he thinks back on the long, arduous 20 years that have passed. In the capital, adventurers note that despite Soalis and Kikiri's hard work, the city still feels drained of energy. Word spreads that Soalis is currently working solo, leading the group to realize they will be split up for a while. Playful banter breaks out as Duke is teased for potentially feeling lonely without her around. The team acknowledges her incredible hustle, noting she's moving between clinics and the army on her own terms. A mock fight erupts between the companions over who is stronger, quickly getting out of hand. The group settles down, admitting that Soalis taught them more than they care to honestly admit. They resolve to put her teachings to use and seek out more real combat experience to grow stronger. The conversation turns serious as they recall the terrifying moment Soalis questioned the king about Saint Lydia. They remember how the air suddenly went tense, signaling a deeper conflict they don't yet understand. As Soalis walks away in the distance, they wonder if she and the royal family share a secret history. The mystery lingers as they confirm that the atmosphere definitely shifted the moment Lydia's name was spoken. The narrative shifts to a pivotal encounter at a grand estate. The scene opens with a quiet transition, setting the stage for an emotional homecoming. Soalis arrives at the gate and warmly greets the elderly Marsa, who is stunned to see her after so long. Overwhelmed with disbelief, Marsa gasps, "No way," as she tearfully recognizes the young lady standing before her. Marsa rushes toward the mansion, screaming at the top of her lungs that Lady Soalis has finally returned. Soalis stands silently before the massive doors of her family home, draped in a traveling cloak. Inside the manor, the staff reacts with shock as the news of her arrival spreads through the halls. Emotional weight fills the air as Marsa breaks down in tears while standing beside an elderly gentleman. The man, leaning heavily on a cane, approaches Soalis with a look of profound disbelief and longing. Trembling with emotion, Soalis looks at the man and softly whispers, "Father." A weathered hand reaches out tentatively, seeking to confirm that the vision before him is real. The father gently places his hands on Soalis' shoulders, his expression softening into one of immense relief. With a tender smile, he welcomes Soalis home and anxiously asks if she has been hurt during her absence. Soalis gazes back at him, her eyes reflecting a whirlwind of suppressed emotions and newfound resolve. Confirming her return, Soalis speaks through her tears to officially announce she is home. In a different wing of the house, an older woman drops her knitting in shock as the sound of a clink echoes through the room. Soalis rushes to the side of the startled woman, who appears to be her mother, as the family reunion intensifies. The mother pulls Soalis into a desperate, crushing embrace, weeping openly as she holds her daughter. They cling to each other in the middle of the grand hall, releasing years of built-up pain and worry. As the initial shock fades, Soalis begins to learn the dark truth about what happened to her family under King Adolf. Her father explains they only survived because the king secretly supported them after they were stripped of their titles and wealth. He reveals that the Knights faction protected them during the brutal attacks led by the anti-Saint group. Describing the horror, he admits they were lucky the mansion wasn't burned down despite the never-ending harassment. He notes that while all other servants fled early on, only the loyal Marsa stayed by their side through the darkness. The conversation takes a somber turn as Soalis asks her parents for the truth regarding Lydia. They describe Lydia as a devil who toyed with countless lives and destroyed the family once she gained the saint's title. The father recounts how Lydia sucked men dry and tossed them away like trash while angry mobs pounded on their doors every night. He remembers the only time he spoke to Lydia and the chilling words she threw back at him. Lydia had coldly argued that since they had her without asking, they were obligated to provide for her happiness. She cruelly blamed her parents for having her after her sister, leaving them utterly speechless. Soalis listens with a heavy heart, her face shadowed as she absorbs the full extent of Lydia's malice. Thanking her parents, Soalis declares that her perspective on Lydia is now clearer than it has ever been. Her father sighs in resignation, telling her he will leave the matter in her capable hands. Soalis comforts her mother, gently telling her not to cry anymore. Soalis is home now, she reassures the weeping woman, holding her hands tightly to provide strength. She vows with absolute certainty that she will never disappear or leave her family again. The exterior of the grand mansion stands quiet under a clear sky, hiding the drama unfolding within. Elsewhere, a man seethes with rage, cursing the healer bitch, and swearing he will never forgive her. The man, Lord David, kicks open a door with a loud thud, barking at Lydia to get up and get to work. Lydia lies in bed, looking disheveled as David demands she get dressed immediately for the tasks ahead. David remains unmoved by her state, focused entirely on the work that needs to be done. Lydia complains that she isn't feeling well, but David dismissively snaps back, "What?" He points out she hasn't fought once since the Flame Demon God battle and accuses her of being suddenly ill for no reason. David's suspicion grows as he asks if she has found another man to provide for her. Lydia desperately denies it, claiming her head feels like it's splitting and she's overcome with nausea. She begs him to believe she only loves him, while David offers a cold promise of forgiveness if she tells the truth. When she tries to reach for him, he reacts violently, and she gasps in pain. David roughly pushes her away, his patience completely exhausted by her antics. He mocks her for having enough nerve to complain and tells her she'll be fine if she has the energy to argue. He mentions a woman who called herself a healer and dared to insult him, stating there is someone he wants Lydia to take down. Lydia, looking stressed, asks what kind of woman she is as David explains the situation. He describes the target as having insane strength in her slender arms, despite not using any visible magic. When he suggests the healer might be stronger than Lydia, she snaps that she won't let that slide. Lydia arrogantly claims her current mana is on a different level compared to any monster or human. With a glare of pure ego, she vows that she won't lose to some wannabe powerhouse. David stands by, watching her with a calculating expression as she fuels her own rage. He smirks to himself, thinking about how easy it is to manipulate such a prideful woman. He tells her to get ready now, satisfied that he has successfully handled her. Lydia assumes the woman is likely still hiding among the lowly commoners. The scene shifts to a different room where Lydia and David are startled by an unexpected presence. A voice from the doorway apologizes for letting themselves in since the door wasn't locked. Lydia and David freeze, staring at the intruder with expressions of pure shock. The visitor asks if anyone else is in the mansion, while Lydia panics, noting she had driven everyone else out. David turns toward the voice, demanding to know who they are. Lydia gasps, "Lord David?" in confusion as a familiar voice calls out from the mansion's interior. A voice echoes through the silence, commanding a trembling presence to wait as the atmosphere grows thick with tension. Panic erupts in the chamber as someone screams for Lydia to fire, the sudden urgency signaling a desperate turn of events. A command rings out with lethal authority, ordering the immediate execution of a plan that cannot be delayed. Lydia grinds her teeth in a fit of rage, her intense focus narrowing as she prepares to unleash a devastating power. With a sudden surge of movement, she lunges forward to push a man out of the way, shielding him from an impending threat. The room is consumed by a blinding flash of high-tier light magic, obliterating everything in its wake with sheer brilliance. Amidst the smoke and debris, a man stares in disbelief at the sudden and brutal escalation into extreme violence. Lord David is met with a chillingly polite greeting from someone he never expected to encounter in this hidden place. Recognition strikes like a thunderbolt as the man realizes the figure before him is the legendary healer from the past. Though the intruder originally sought the woman, they offer David a chance to survive by joining their cause instead. David reels in confusion, questioning the possibility of allying himself with the woman known as Lydia. In a frantic moment of realization, he turns sharply and identifies the woman as the one he has been searching for. Sweat beads on his face as he confirms she is indeed the same person who has been the center of his discussions. The woman's face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated terror, her eyes wide with a horrific realization. A piercing scream of agony and fear rips through the air as she recoils from the presence of her long-lost adversary. The man shouts in a panic, demanding to know what is happening as the situation spirals completely out of control. Desperation takes hold as he yells for an explanation, unable to comprehend the chaos unfolding before his eyes. Trembling with uncontrollable fear, the woman stammers that the impossible has happened, her world shattering in an instant. A sudden movement cuts through the air as the man demands Lydia identify the mysterious woman who has just appeared. The hooded figure reveals herself with a cold, calm greeting, noting that it has been a long time since they last met. Lydia is paralyzed by the sight of her sister, fullI, who has spent 20 grueling years returning from the abyss. The grand bedchamber stands as a silent witness to chapter, where a legacy of betrayal is about to be settled. Tears stream down a face of despair as the name of fullI is whispered like a curse through the heavy air. fullI reveals her identity as the one framed by a conspiracy and cast into the terrifying depths of the nether sphere. Towering over the cowering woman, fullI radiates an overwhelming aura of power that defies all logic and reason. With a smug smile, fullI explains she simply used spatial magic to transition from the nether sphere's subspace back to reality. She pointedly reminds her sister that this incredible new magic only exists because of the betrayal she was forced to endure. The weight of the transgression is made clear as fullI declares that Lydia has finally crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Lydia begins to stammer a pathetic apology, but fullI cuts her off, noting that mere words can never fix her crimes. Clasping her hands in a desperate plea, the fallen saint begs for her life to be spared at any cost. fullI lets out a weary sigh, questioning what possible accomplishment could be gained from simply killing someone so pathetic. fullI lectures the greedy saint on the suffering and death she caused while using a forbidden tool to steal her title. The confrontation reaches a peak as fullI challenges her sister to surpass her achievements if she still dares to call herself a saint. While Lydia whimpers that she cannot comply, fullI firmly corrects her, stating that she absolutely will perform her new duties. The chilling revelation continues as fullI mentions the specific use of divine mana essence, a substance with a terrible price. Shocked and horrified, the woman wonders how fullI could possibly know the dark secrets of the forbidden potion she used. fullI points out that Lydia's body is failing and she no longer possesses even the strength to lash out in defense. She explains that divine mana essence carries severe side effects that the greedy saint clearly failed to consider. The potion is revealed to be a double-edged sword that amplifies mana while corroding the user's body and triggering rampages. The focus shifts back to Lord David, who watches in silence as the judgment of the two sisters unfolds before him. The two conspirators scream in unison, begging for their lives and for the vengeful sister to stay away from them. fullI declares their punishment. All their stolen wealth will be returned to the people as they begin their long atonement. With a cold and unwavering gaze, she informs the pair that they will now have to stake their very lives on their service. A magical contract is manifested as fullI mandates that they will perform every task she assigns without question. The scroll contains forbidden terms that bind them to a fate they never imagined, sealing their roles as eternal servants. Lydia stares at the document in a trance, realization dawning that her life of luxury has been permanently replaced by servitude. fullI outlines a brutal schedule of medical work with only 1-hour breaks, ensuring maximum efficiency until the day they die. The royalty and the saint are outraged, decrying the manual labor and the humiliation of working alongside commoners as slavery. Lydia desperately pleads for forgiveness, offering to work hard at anything else to avoid a lifetime of such grueling labor. In response to their defiance, Soalis prepares to cast a high-tier dark magic spell to secure their absolute compliance. Dark energy surges through the room, beginning a transformation that will strip the conspirators of their former identities. The pair cries out in shock as the magic takes hold, shattering their resistance and altering the fabric of their minds. Soalis issues the final decree. Lord David is banned from all magic, and Lydia is restricted solely to healing magic. She explains that every mage has spell formulas engraved in their subconscious, which serve as the foundation of their power. By overriding these formulas, Soalis leaves a permanent void in their minds, erasing their ability to ever use offensive magic again. Soalis admits that performing such a deep mental overwrite was the one thing she truly never wanted to do. Despite her hesitation, she justifies her actions by stating she had no choice because they refused to listen to reason. She prepares the final stage of the high-tier dark magic, her resolve hardening as she moves to finish the link. Agonizing screams fill the chamber as their minds are forcefully linked to hers, creating a bond of total mental subjugation. Soalis promises that while they remain conscious, they will never act freely or harm another living soul again. Lydia sobs and begs for mercy, finally admitting that everything that has transpired is entirely her own fault. The sun sets on their former lives, the shadows of the room lengthening as the weight of their new reality sets in. In a final, desperate attempt at manipulation, Lydia cries out that they are sisters and claims she always admired Soalis. The plea falls on deaf ears as Soalis remembers the cold truth of their bond and the betrayal she suffered. Soalis stands alone in the ruins of the chamber, reminding the broken saint that she was the one who decided Soalis was no longer needed. High-angle view of a lavishly decorated room, where scattered black leaves and debris clutter the floor near an ornate fireplace. A cobblestone street lined with traditional timber-framed buildings stretches toward the distance, populated by small silhouettes of townspeople. The hooded saintess stands at the base of a grand, weathered stone staircase leading up to a towering, multi-spired royal castle. Reflecting on the selfishness of those she encountered, the saintess feels a wave of dejection over their inability to understand what is truly unforgivable. Struggling to manage her inner turmoil, she admits her lack of emotional control and acknowledges that she still has a long road ahead of her. She forcefully slaps her cheeks to snap out of her funk, reminding herself that the people are still suffering and need her help. A wide view of the city shows the saintess looking at the castle, determined to provide clothing and shelter that cannot be fixed overnight. Raising her arms with renewed resolve, the saintess declares it is time to perform another round of laundry for the city. Passers-by in the town square look on with confusion as the hooded figure begins to gather her mystical energy. Concentrating deeply, the saintess initiates spatial control to influence the environment around her. Rings of light expand outward from her body as she floats, channeling a massive amount of mana into the sky. She senses the deep bedrock beneath the capital and locates a massive fault line running directly through the earth. With a look of triumph, she finds the perfect spot and realizes her plan to revitalize the area will actually work. The ground erupts with violent force as she unleashes high-tier earth magic to reshape the landscape. Panic grips the citizens as a powerful earthquake shakes the city, while the saintess smiles, knowing the process has begun. She calls forth a healing rain to wash over the area and soothe the structural damage. Steam rises from the ground, causing the townspeople to cry out in shock as they realize the water falling around them is boiling hot. The saintess continues to dance through the air, surrounded by floating orbs of water and magical energy. Drawing on more high-tier earth magic, she stabilizes the shifting terrain beneath her feet. Massive cracks spiderweb across the plaza floor as steam and energy burst from the subterranean depths. Large craters form in the earth, filling rapidly with the mysterious, heated water. Drenched and confused, the men in the square stare in awe at the transformation taking place before their eyes. The realization hits the crowd. The saintess has used her immense power to create a massive hot spring in the middle of the capital. Joy erupts as the people realize they can soak in the hot water, eagerly urging one another to jump in. The citizens marvel at the priceless gift of a warm bath, making sure the children are the first to enjoy the therapeutic waters. Exhausted but determined, The Saintess catches her breath and prepares for the first real test of her expanded abilities. She pushes her limits even further, shouting for a spatial grand expansion to cover a wider area. The scale of the magic reaches royal capital class, an unprecedented level of spatial manipulation. Pain seizes her as an insane amount of mana pours out, leaving her feeling as if her head is splitting apart. Gritting her teeth against the agony, she questions the point of having million mana if she cannot use it when it matters most. The Saintess commands herself to show some guts, refusing to back down from the overwhelming magical strain. The spatial magic intensifies, glowing with a blinding light that reflects her iron will. She culminates her efforts by casting a massive healing magic spell that encompasses the entire district. A man looks up at the sky in wonder as glowing particles of healing light drift down like snow. In a nearby home, an elderly man sits up in bed, fully healed and revitalized by the Saintess's divine intervention. Naked citizens soak in the hot springs, their faces filled with relief as the magical water mends their fatigue and injuries. A pillar of pure white light erupts in the distance, visible across the mountains as a beacon of hope. A group of armored knights and adventurers stops in their tracks, pointing toward the incredible display of power at the city center. From behind a window, a bespectacled girl watches the townspeople celebrate their newfound vitality. The girl, revealed to be the Saintess in a different outfit, clasps her hands together while observing the healing progress. She feels embarrassed by her current attire but is glad the hot spring has provided the perfect distraction for the public. Reflecting on her journey, she recalls that she originally learned spatial magic only as a means of escape. She marvels at how exciting magic can be, realizing that any spell can be transformed depending on the user's intent. Vowing to study more, she resolves to strengthen herself so she won't collapse from exhaustion the next time she pushes her limits. With a fist pumped in the air, she commits herself to keeping up this hard work for the rest of her life. Night falls over the capital, with a crescent moon hanging peacefully over a large estate. Tucked into bed, the Saintess groans in pain as she suffers from a rough bout of mana sickness. She laments her inability to spam spatial healing magic without further research, admitting she didn't expect the backlash to be this severe. Despite the sickness, she is satisfied that her emergency treatment for the capital's citizens worked out successfully. She plans to ask the king to turn the spring into a public bath to improve general sanitation and health. Her magic has put people back on their feet, ensuring the clinics aren't overwhelmed and the capital feels more alive than ever. With the people healed, the knights and adventurers can move freely to maintain the peace and protect the city. While things are going well so far, a sudden wham at her door reminds her that there is still much to be done. Startled in her bed, she looks toward the window and wonders if a thief has managed to infiltrate her room. A mysterious figure in a flat cap and simple tunic crouches in the shadows, brandishing a wicked-looking dagger. The Saintess notes that coming after her with just a single knife is an incredibly reckless move for an assassin. The intruder's face is tensed with focus as he prepares to strike, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat. The Saintess moves with blinding speed, catching the assailant off guard and eliciting a pained gasp. She stares down the intruder, noting that she doesn't recognize him and finds his attempt on her life futile. She observes that he looks like an ordinary civilian with no combat experience and demands to know who sent him. The man lets out a blood-curdling scream of agony as the Saintess exerts her dominance over him. The Saintess looks on with a confused, as the man's body reacts violently to an unknown force. Standing over the fallen intruder, the Saintess expresses her surprise at the sudden turn of events. A close-up reveals a dark, veined mark or substance spreading across the man's skin. As the transformation or curse takes hold, the Saintess stares in shock, wondering what that terrifying manifestation could be. Shocked by a sudden development, the young woman recoils as her long ponytail whips through the air. A massive, green-skinned monstrous hand looms in the foreground, prompting a terrified cry of, "What is that?" Bathed in the glow of a full moon, the golden-haired woman stands in her hooded regalia, looking on with wide, purple eyes. The dark silhouette of a grand mansion sits under a starry night sky as leaves drift through the air. Inside the manor, the woman confronts a hulking, green-skinned brute emanating a dark, magical aura. The brute's massive, transformed arm swings violently toward a man who grits his teeth in desperation. With incredible speed and precision, the woman strikes the monster's arm, sending a powerful shockwave through the room. She pins the massive limb down, demanding to know the intruder's identity under the threat of death. Panicked and overwhelmed, the man realizes he was misled about his target's capabilities. The woman slams the attacker into the floor with a heavy blow, sternly demanding to know who sent him. Towering over the defeated foe, she coldly repeats her demand for answers as he cries out in pain. The attacker confesses that a priest from the demon's cult promised him greater power in exchange for research materials from the mansion. The woman recalls her past as a saintess when she researched magic and demons for her own purposes, wondering if the cult seeks what she left behind. Struggling to breathe, the man expresses disbelief that she is unaware of the notorious organization. He explains that the demon's cult preaches that humans are imperfect and offers the true power hidden within them. Exasperated by the mention of another group of fanatics, she demands the name and location of the priest. Gasps for air, the man admits he doesn't know the priest's name but met him in District 6 of the royal capital. Just as he mentions the capital, the man's eyes bulge in agony as a sudden convulsion takes hold. To the woman's horror, a grotesque, snake-like creature erupts violently from the man's open mouth. The woman recoils in shock as the man's body is consumed by the erupting darkness and his final screams. She stands alone in the hallway, staring down at the grisly remains of the attacker, now entwined by a serpent. Disbelieving the scene before her, she mutters that this must be some kind of cruel joke. The woman realizes that if this were standard magic, she would have seen through it instantly. She contemplates the nature of demons, noting that some possess terrifying abilities that exist outside the laws of magic. Looking at her hand, she wonders if the strange phenomenon she just witnessed shares that same demonic origin. Determined to avoid discovery, she decides to clean the area and bury the remains before her father or the staff notice. Gazing out of the mansion window, her thoughts remain fixed on the mysterious and dangerous demon's cult. The crescent moon hangs high over the clouds as the night deepens over the silent estate. The scene shifts to a bright, sunlit day as a new morning begins over the city buildings. In a bustling but dilapidated area, a person in a white cloak walks past dejected citizens resting in the streets. Entering the heart of District 6, the cloaked woman moves through the crowded, narrow thoroughfares. A group of rough-looking men confront her, aggressively demanding that she hand over her cash. She observes that while the district was always known for beggars, the atmosphere has become far more sinister. A man leans in close to her face, mocking her with a lecherous comment about her appearance. Unfazed, she coldly states she is in a hurry and delivers a swift, crushing blow to the man's face. The harasser clutches his bleeding mouth in pain as the woman walks away, remarking that the place is even more of a dump than before. She remains focused on her mission, intent on gathering intel even if she doesn't find the specific priest immediately. She pauses as something catches her eye, reaffirming her goal to uncover the secrets of the cult. A large crowd gathers near a stone wall, listening to a figure who is preaching loudly to the masses. The speaker shouts fanatically to the crowd, proclaiming that human beings are fundamentally imperfect. The woman identifies the preacher as the person she's looking for while he screams at the crowd to cast off their human forms. Observing from the back, she realizes he is likely a simple believer rather than a high-ranking priest. The preacher gestures wildly, claiming that the capital has it easy while defenseless villages are being wiped out. He questions the fairness of the world, asking what they did wrong after living honestly and morally. With rising fervor, he recounts the merciless slaughter of families and loved ones despite their screams for help. He declares to the desperate crowd that in this harsh reality, lacking power is the ultimate evil. The woman watches as he hammers home the point that their own weakness was the fault that led to their suffering. The crowd begins to murmur in agreement, emotionally charged by his words and questioning their past suffering. The speaker finalizes his rhetoric, shouting that if weakness is evil, then gaining power is the only true justice. The listeners are intrigued, wondering if he means picking up weapons to fight back against their oppressors. The preacher dismisses their idea of physical weapons, preparing to show them the cult's version of true power. The woman's eyes widen as she senses something dangerous beginning to manifest from the speaker. With a maniacal shout of, "This!" the man's arm grotesquely transforms into a jagged demonic claw. The audience reacts in sheer terror, with one woman screaming as the preacher reveals his monstrous transformation. He commands them not to panic but to witness the true potential of the essence he now possesses. With a single swipe of his transformed limb, he unleashes a massive shockwave that shatters the stone wall and ground. The crowd erupts in screams of agony as the sheer force of the demonic power tears through the area. The woman realizes with dread that this power is extremely dangerous and definitely not based on magic. The preacher mocks the crowd's shock, asking if they expected such power to come from an ordinary old man. He declares that this monstrosity is their true essence, inviting them to join him in his evolution. The cultist urges the people to abandon their frail human bodies immediately to claim this new strength. The woman watches the scene with a mix of disgust and concern, noting how the terrified people are being manipulated. A desperate man from the crowd steps forward, asking if he too can attain that kind of power. The woman looks on in shock as the man approaches the transformed preacher. The preacher welcomes him with a sinister grin, affirming that everyone has the right to cast off their humanity. A desperate man pleads for the same power he sees before him. The hooded woman stands firm, asserting that human strength and the knight's recent victory over the demons prove they are strong enough to stand alone. While she argues that monster nests are decreasing thanks to adventurers and healers, the man grimly warns that the exhausted knights are barely catching their breath and another attack would mean their end. The woman's expression freezes in shock as the man reveals the trauma of being the sole survivor of a village that fled to the capital for safety. Gripping his face in agony, he laments the reckless, shallow thought that the capital would be safe while screaming for his lost comrades, wife and child. The hooded woman watches in silence as he confesses that everyone he loved died simply because he lacked the power to save them. A close-up of her eye reflects the heavy realization that being protected by someone else is never as simple as it seems. She reflects on the crushing regret of failing to protect what matters with one's own hands and how being protected can sometimes highlight one's own powerlessness. Clenching her fist tightly against her chest, she acknowledges that when all else is lost, only a thirst for vengeance remains. Softening her stance, she offers a sincere apology for her previously careless words. She admits that while she wants to believe in human strength, she understands his perspective. Looking down at the man, she notes that without overwhelming power, humans will forever be prey and that the very act of fighting like this is a form of weakness. The man with jagged teeth interrupts, tempting him with the chance for revenge if he is willing to cast off his human form. The hooded woman politely interjects, asking if she may seek clarification on a certain point. With a sinister grin and a clawed hand visible, the man asks her what she wants to know. She gazes at his monstrous, elongated claws and questions if this is the power he is actually referring to. With a dismissive look, she bluntly states that such a gift seems incredibly unreliable. The man is taken aback, his confident expression faltering at her unexpected critique. She questions if ordinary civilians who have no combat training could truly hope to battle monsters and demons using only those claws. The hooded woman points out that such a transformation is essentially the same as remaining completely unarmed. The man laughs off her doubt, claiming he will show her how humans break free from being weaklings because his power involves much more than just claws. A subtle, confident smile plays on the hooded woman's lips as she invites him to proceed with his demonstration. The man's eyes glow with a blinding light as he undergoes a violent and terrifying